Please stay with us. And please call on to center stage our speakers for this session. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let me get everybody's... One moment.
Our next session will be entitled Exploring the Future of Sustainability and Community Value Across Travel. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Moderator, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So can we have up to join us Joel Katz? And Joel is the Managing Director of CLIA, Australasia and Asia. I hope I've got that right.
CLIA.
And very good to have you. We should have Yang Li with us, who is the Head of Public Affairs for Booking.com in Asia. Great to have you. Brune, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer of Accor. Very good to have you. And then Johanna Fischer, who is the CEO of TMF Marketing. In fact, not. No? She's online. That's going to make it exciting to... Additional moderating challenge. Thank you. Right. Johanna, welcome. So I'm going to start with the, just going one time round the group, if that's okay. We're sort of just coming out of this very challenging time through COVID, with the industry having been heavily hit. Help me understand, what is the sustainability priority that you face? Surely everything else is a bigger priority right now, but where does sustainability fit into your thinking, given all the other challenges that the pandemic has caused for the industry? So I'm going to go, I guess, right to left, if that's okay, and then we'll go in other orders for other questions. So let me start with you, if that's all right, Joel.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Obviously, COVID has had an enormous impact, particularly on the cruise industry, which I'm part of. But we didn't let go of the sustainability, I suppose you could say, challenge through the COVID. So while the industry was not operating for almost 2 years, behind the scenes, all the work on environmental stewardship, sustainability, and the research and development that is a long-term project, all continued in the background. And that was important because we couldn't let it stop because of those long lead times, and of course because of those commitments to the 40% reduction by 2030 and then the net zero by 2050.
So do you see the pandemic as accelerating some of these actions, or it just didn't slow it down?
It didn't slow it down, and I suppose you could say that to some extent it accelerated it, because behind the scenes it allowed more focus and more attention on those activities while the ships weren't operating.
So we'll come back to getting more precise as to what exactly those activities are, right? Because I'm not going to let you away with that.
Absolutely.
Yang Li.
Yes.
Same question.
Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, yes.
Same question.
So like the cruise industry, I mean, I think in the accommodation space and with our partner in Accor here, is that, you know, we all suffered immensely as well. Volumes dropped down in some places 90% compared to pre-COVID. So the focus, out of the pandemic is obviously to grow those volumes back up. And now the good thing is we've observed and we've monitored, a lot of pent-up demand. So we're seeing growth actually year on year even higher than pre-COVID numbers at the moment. So we think that, but we believe that is, a bit of an initial surge that should kind of plateau as people get their initial trips kind of out of the way. But I think our sustainability focus began before COVID, but COVID accelerated our thinking, but also our investment. And one of those things that we saw, much like what Joel was saying, when people stopped traveling and when people stopped crowding those tourist, kind of attractions, you saw the revitalization of nature. right? The famous example being fish returning to Venice, right?
Yep.
So I think we saw that, and we realized that, you know, this is something we can't ignore as a company in trying to play our part. But you know, being in the travel industry, it's tricky because sometimes people will say, well, why don't you just, you know, not encourage people to travel? I think this was posited, you know, in the previous panel as well. But at Booking, we fundamentally believe that travel is a force for good, and that people need to connect. And in fact, you can argue a lot of the world's problems happen because we don't connect enough.
Yep.
So what we try to do is how do we mitigate the negative effects of that while we continue to connect people.
And what does that mean in practice?
So I'll talk more about this later, but late last year, 2021, we introduced our Travel Sustainable Badge program. It's a program that we really co-developed with the Global Sustainability Tourism Council, GSTC. And really, it's not meant to be a certification, but it's really meant to be our way of trying to propagate properties who adopt sustainable practices within their operations. So this goes down to, and I think Liz had mentioned, you know, builders now are incorporating sustainable materials, construction methods into the way they build. And we want to recognize them for that. And we also want to show consumers these efforts that accommodation partners are putting in. And ultimately what we want to do is we want to nudge more consumers to choose those options versus non-sustainable options. Mm-hmm. So as an intermediary, we get to play this space of influencing both the supply and the demand. So I think we want to take advantage of that.
Cool. Brune. Accelerated, slowed down.
We will see whether it has actually accelerated. I would hope that it will and that it has. But clearly, it has changed a lot of things for the key stakeholders in the hospitality industry, I would say. If you look at employees, for example, in Europe, and I think it's like that pretty much everywhere in the world, or at least in the western part of the world, it's extremely difficult to find employees. They really do not want to work for us. And we can just hide and find good excuses. The reality is that we were not treating our employees well enough. So they do not want to come back. So what does it mean? It means that we need to completely, in a way, recreate what we have to offer as employees. A second thing also that has, I think, really changed is customers, at least, again, in the western part of the world. So I don't want to sound too Europe-centric, but for Accor, about 2/3 of our hotels are in Europe. So obviously, that's why I'm focusing also on this part. But I think it's true also for Asia, or at least for Western customers coming to Asia. People want to have longer stays. They want to be able to both travel and work. And so that changes also the role of a hotel. It's no longer a place where you can just come and you stay there basically as little as you can. It's really a place that has to transform itself. Finally, also, owners of the hotels, I think they understood, or they, at least again, and we can see that probably with COP27 and the discussions during the G20 and the war in Ukraine. I mean, they see that there is increasing pressure on the way they manage their hotels, on the way, like, for example, on curbing CO2 emissions, on on really the environmental performance of their hotels. They understand, I think now increasingly so, that unless they tackle that, they will not be able to future-proof their hotels. And so I think really there is a change of perspective on all the different stakeholders. Whether they will come and whether it will end up actually turning into a real change for the industry, this is really to be...
Still to be seen.
Exactly.
Still to be
and by the way, yeah, we can discuss that later. But I'm not sure the type of initiatives that, in a way, you're launching is really helping. If I may be
we'll
super blunt.
Because I think actually these panels are much more interesting if we have a real conversation.
That's why I'm trying to be a bit provocative.
That's shocked that you're provocative, Brune. But now, Johanna, are you with us on screen?
I'm there.
Great.
Hello.
Wonderful.
Hello.
Very, very good to have you, Johanna, with us.
Thank you. Greetings to Bali.
How are we coming out of the pandemic? What's the experience of that pandemic done to the sustainability agenda?
Well, my background is the meetings industry, the global meetings industry, and the time of the pandemic was very much used to build legacy projects. As we connect knowledge through meetings, it is important to share this knowledge with destinations. And I think it's a very good approach to tourism as well. We need to change the perspective about how we travel, but we also need to use travel to change our perspectives. If we want the change that we need, like Guterres said in Cairo now, that we are on the highway to climate hell with the foot on the accelerator, I think the situation is serious and we have to really be very innovative to accelerate the developments. And travel and tourism can be a very, very important tool, but you might have to look at it from other ways. It's the approach we presently have is very fragmented. It's like a bit here, a bit there, much talk, but much insecurity about how to process. In the end, we have to work across sectors. We have to see travel as a quality way to change, you know. So there are a lot of different options to do that. And legacy for me is the biggest, how can you say, to hold it together. So we work on a project with water legacy because water legacy reaches in much of these, but I'll explain a bit more later.
Well, seize the floor now, Johanna, while you've got it. And just share a little bit more of that project so that we understand the perspective that you're bringing to the conversation.
Yes. This what you showed, the 3 horizons of development, I'm actually in number 3 already, which means to think in big systems rather than in fragmented channels. So we have this initiative called Frau Blau. Frau Blau is German, but it means Lady Blue, Mother Earth, Gaia, the blue planet. It stands for water, and it's a caretaking approach. Water is reaching out in almost all the other SDGs. It's essential for many, many of the tourism destinations, if not for all. And particularly tourism destinations with over-tourism or depending on tourism are really depending on water and see more and more challenges to provide fresh water. So the approach of providing a legacy and an advocacy for water reaches in many, many others. It reaches from ocean to climate, to life on land, to smart city building, into everything. And it can be integrated in tourism policies as a means to bring the community and the travelers together. So I don't see that people are voluntarily paying more for their tickets just to compensate, but they might be willing to contribute to other causes if it gives them the feeling that they are important and that they can be part of change in their favorite holiday destination.
The key to this is to find ways to take these very fragmented components of the value chain or of the industry and somehow bring them together to generate coherent action at scale, right, that every stakeholder can be, if you will, part of.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And that's a huge challenge, right? If we could unlock it, it's a huge opportunity. I am going to start, Joel, with you. I mean, and then I'm going to come back to this debate that was just simmering away, right, between Yang Li and Brune on a version of what it means to, if you will, create common action. So you sit there with the in an industry association with all your cruise, if you will, companies. Help us understand how that process of really being not just lowest common denominator, but being ambitious works, Joel? Because I've seen tons of industry associations in my 30 years in this game, and on the whole, they're lowest common denominator. What's different here, and how, just give us some confidence about that.
I think what's different here is that all the cruise lines recognize that this is an imperative. It's not only the right. It's not only the right thing to do. It's also what our customers are going to demand of us. So, by initially adopting the IMO's interim 40% by 2030 reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and then
that's an absolute reduction
compared to 2008 carbon emissions compared to 2008 levels.
Does that mean it's a reduction from today?
Well,
come back to that.
Yeah, come back to that. Because the industry is growing at the same time.
Well,
that's
indeed,
the challenge.
And that is the challenge.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm pushing you on.
Yeah, and that's...
Because we actually have to reduce things in absolute terms.
So that's why we then went to the net zero by 2050.
That's a long way away, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But we're an industry that has very significant assets and heavy infrastructure needs. So we really need to be doing that work now to set ourselves up for that future. And whether it's I've just got back from the launch of a new ship in Doha, one of the biggest ships in the world, but also one of the most technologically advanced ships in the world. So it's the largest ship using LNG. Now we all know LNG is not the answer, but it's a transition. So there's an immediate reduction in sulfur, in particulate matter, in NOx, but it's not achieving what it needs to achieve in carbon. But by building the ship as an LNG ship, it means it's then ready for that next generation of biofuels or synthetic fuels as they come.
So this ship could be converted easily?
Very simply. This ship already has a test, it's got a fuel cell to be able to test the technology, but at the same time as launching, and to that point about these long lead times, at the same time as launching the ship this week with a small fuel cell on, the same company has committed that I think it's the third or the fourth ship further down the line will have a more substantial fuel cell on board that will actually operate, be able to...
That will be the
main generation when the ship's in port, so that they're not generating any emissions when they're in port. And again, that's a step to the net zero. And then there are all those other areas, so the advanced wastewater systems, to ensure that any water that's going back into the ocean is in most cases cleaner than the water that came out of the ocean. Things which we don't think about, which sort of just run in the back. So noise management systems, so that the noise that the ship makes is not impacting the marine life. The anti-fouling paints to ensure that as the ship moves around, they're not contaminating the oceans from one area to the next. So all these technologies are under constant development, and each next generation of ship is then leading with that technology in order to, I suppose, reach that pathway forward. But to your point, the cruise lines have all recognized that this is inevitable. So that's why, as an industry, we've made those commitments to net zero, and then each of the cruise lines now has to work to deliver on that commitment.
If a cruise liner couldn't actually and doesn't want to be on that pathway, will they be asked to leave the association?
Well, I don't know that any cruise line will survive if they're not. I mean that's the direction that the whole of travel and tourism is going in, and I think the same point applies to any business, I suppose, that you need to be able to demonstrate to your clients, because ultimately it'll be the customers that decide. So it's very important that they are on that pathway, and certainly all our members are, and that's the expectation.
Amazing. Now, to the question, I mean, and of course it could relate to the interaction between all of you. We have an intermediary that has the potential to create if you will, the information that would allow for people to make better choices as travelers, and for hotels to be or cruise liners or airlines, like, but a whole set of actors to be rewarded for being top of the tree, right, when it comes to their ESG performance. That sounded like what you're trying to do, or the beginning of it, but I kind of heard from Brune that there was something about the way you're doing it that wasn't creating the collaborative, if you will, opportunity to unlock the potential of that play. So have I understood, Yingli, the approach that you're taking in the right way, and just kind of help us make sure we've really understood what you're doing, because it could be transformative.
Yeah, before I do that, maybe I'll let Brune...
will have the right of explaining how, if it was done in an even better way, it could be more powerful for the industry as a whole. So that's the conversation we're just about to be in.
So maybe I'll let Brune go first.
Well,
oh my goodness.
okay. If you want, someone has to start, I guess. No, I mean, at first glance, it's very, tempting to say that it's a great initiative. If you look into that in more details, it's actually favoring the lowest common denominator, which is, I think, what is killing sustainability everywhere. We talked about, groups of industries, and I think it's the case everywhere, and especially in this initiative. Because it's actually saying, and of course, because the hospitality industry is really fragmented, you have big, large corporations like Accor, and you have very small actors. But what actually the initiative Travelist is doing is simply sort of coming up with a list of labels and just putting it online next to the hotels. So what it means is, for example, I'm trying to push all of our hotels to be and to work on the most ambitious possible labels. The thing is, they will be in competition with the hotel next door that is actually using or embracing the least ambitious certification program. So these two, so it creates a sort of competition that is not fair. And what is Travelist saying? Well, that's really sad. It's a fragmented industry with a lot of small players and family-owned businesses. They don't have the tools or they don't have the skills to actually go and embrace the most ambitious labels. Then what's your role? It's too easy to just be an online platform. How are you getting more real? What are the type of funding that you're actually providing, or what is the type of support you're actually concretely, not through a foundation that does nice stuff on the side, that you're actually providing to the hotels? How are you helping lift the industry, accelerate? Because the whole discussion we were having, especially in your industry, the goal is not, yes, obviously it's 2050, but it's how fast you move that really matters. And all of this is not reflected in Travelist. And so the only thing it does now is actually make my job and make the job of those who really want to be ambitious more difficult. That's it. You're actually slowing down our efforts. And I find it not only shocking, but also exactly not the way to go.
So,
I'm super blunt, I'm sorry.
I love it. You will very, very rarely have panels where people have a real conversation. So enjoy this, right? Only in Bali with Brune, of course. So how would you respond to that?
So thank you for sharing that very frank and honest opinion. I think that's actually exactly the type of discourse we would like to have. No program is perfect, and we realize that there is some rudimentariness in the program now, which is true, because we started the program late last year, before most borders have opened up, right? So we haven't had a lot of immense amount of accommodation traction in terms of getting on to the program. We have about 400,000 partners now that's on the program as of today. So over a 1-year period, we've had, we've been able to gain some traction. And the thing is we have realized that, we don't do enough to differentiate, those who have, as you said, invested the most that they could versus the smaller players who lack the resources. As you said, to be able to fund, a lot of the investments into the building infrastructure, to the certifications that are out there, which are time-consuming and expensive. So those are all, in fact, true. So we are working to address that. This
is something I asked about a year ago, and it's still.
But a year ago we had just started, right? We had just started. So all the things that Brune has mentioned are things that we actually do recognize. So it's not that we're looking at her views or maybe views of other partners as well and saying you're wrong. We love our program. We're going to go full steam ahead. That's not the way we approach it. And I think one of the reasons why Booking has been able to be successful is that we do listen to our partners. And we have a lot of partners globally.
Yeah, otherwise you don't have business. I mean,
exactly.
She's
right.
I mean, it's way too easy to say. I mean, sorry, I keep interrupting you. Please, Mr. Chair, just tell me to stop if you want.
Use your last interruption right. Wow, this is it.
No, please.
And then I forgot what I wanted to say. No, but yeah. I mean, at some point, companies like yours will have to take their responsibility. It's not because you're not in the real world that, somehow, it's not by putting solar panels on your data centers that you will actually really do something about changing the industry you make money on. And so I think at some point you need to get real. You need to set up, I don't know, an innovation is your job, it's your business. So
yes.
Just come up with something innovative that will help actually channel funding to the hotels for whom for which it's the most difficult to actually work and get into the bandwagon of the sustainable transitions. That's the sort of things that we would need. Otherwise, you know what you're going to say, and I suggested it to travelists. You'll put one leaf, one green leaf, 2 green leaves, 3 green leaves, fine. But it's not going to change the world. And what we need now is everybody to step up. And I think it's too easy to just say we're doing everything we can, the program is not perfect, we're working on it. But at the end of the day,
Yeah, I want to add something.
Sorry.
Could I respond to that?
I think you should respond.
Okay. Sorry, Johanna, just one quick response.
But again, this is a discussion we're having, right? We are partners, as you said.
Of course. By the way, Accor is one of our strongest partners, just FYI. But actually, I'll give you an example right now. We actually are funding a group of SME hotels to get the GSTC certification in Singapore as a booking holdings company right now. I believe it's 40 or 50 hotel groups, partners of ours, and we're absolutely putting money where our mouth is, as you said. And this is not directly related to the badge program. So I mean, I can't share the whole breadth of every single thing we're doing, of course, right now. But I fully agree with you that we need to do more. Other players in our particular sector need to do more. We need to put more money on the table, and we're absolutely doing that. We could do more, obviously, but when it comes to labels and information conveyance, I may have a slight disagreement to Brune in the sense of whether labels or designations matter or don't matter. I do think the whole foundation of certifications, right, is built on a label system. That if you comply with some of the criteria that you have fulfilled to get the certification, you get a label. And I think these labels, they go to ISO have labels, quality marks, CE on electrical appliances. All these labels do have meaning, or else we wouldn't have them. And they indicate a measure of trust and a measure of quality. So I have a slight disagreement that the labels don't do anything. Now, whether they really do move the needle in terms of influencing consumer choice, that is the next question we have to tackle. So what incentives do we have to put in play to nudge consumers to choose that more sustainable option? Now, when they choose a sustainable option that has a solar panel, maybe that one choice isn't going to move the needle. But hundreds, thousands of people who make that choice start to move the needle. And we're not there yet to quantify all that impact, because again, we've just started the program and we don't have all of our partners on it. And we are going to introduce levels as well. I know you mentioned that, even if you add levels. Yeah, so we are doing that. In fact, we are going to do that to differentiate between those who have invested more and have more operational practices in place versus those who are not doing as much. Now, we're not saying one is worse or the other. There are many problems that occur between why you can't invest as much, right? But we're doing that, and that is coming out next year in 2023. So before I go on any longer, I'll stop here and let Johanna.
It's my turn.
And then I'd like to, Johanna, after that, I'm going to just check to see if there's any real questions in the audience before I do one last round with the
Sorry, I wanted
Johanna.
to add something to, you have left me out, sorry. I wanted to answer to the previous discussion. Can I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think when I listen to you, I think you have to move out of your spaces. If you want to apply true innovation, you have to look at an innovation model that includes all the areas of humanity and of our lives. If you just move within your hotel space, you will also think you will use old solutions and turn them new or add a level or something, but it's not a true innovation. When you say certifications, yes, certifications are a basic level for sustainable tourism. There are very good certifications like Green Key. A lot of hotels are working along these certifications, and they are also very strict. So you have to invest a lot, also invest hard and engagement to reach those goals. But still, they are only a basic. They can be a hotel that is certified, but it still is embedded in the society, in the politics, in the academics, in the environment in that in that destination. So we have to look at the rims. Where are we overlapping with the other areas in society? There we will find the innovation. Like Frau Blau or Ecomise could help Booking.com very well to work on a legacy project around water, for example, or around another topic. Water would be perfect because everyone resonates with it. So there are opportunities, but you have to look beyond your space. That's very important.
So I completely agree with that. I want to just check before we go into a last round with the most open panel that you will find. Are there questions in the audience that you would like to pose to the panel? Please. And maybe there's a microphone that someone can... Mic? Is there a mic?
I think my voice hard enough you can hear me before I wait for the mic. But my question is a very basic and a very practical one. It's about the food waste in the hotel industry. Do we have guidelines? Do we have a roadmap? Or how do we work with this? Because I'm from the Chamber of Commerce in the Horticulture Division of Indonesia. So I'm very concerned on this because I'm working a lot with the farmers down on, and this is very basic because the farmers, the on-farm, we already lost a lot of food from there. And then in the industry, the food waste is just mentioned, but we really don't know what's happening. I think I would like to know more about that. Thank you.
Super, thank you. There's another, I'm going to take just 2 or 3 questions and make sure that we get them. There's one over, the gentleman, please stand up and tell us who you are.
Okay, thank you. My name is Agung from Udayana University at the Center of Excellence in Tourism. I was the person who bring the green certification to Bali or to Indonesia in year 2000. Up to now, I don't see any much development on the certification in green tourism. I was involved in Green Globe Asia Pacific, EarthCheck, now GSTC as well. I'm one of the assessor of GSTC in Indonesia. So what actually the trend of the visitors' perception about the green tourism in this era? Because from year 2000 up to now, 20 years ago, up till now, I just see a bit difference on the perception from the visitor side. But from the supply side, it's much different. They're moving fast from 2005 until now. So many hotels in Bali have been certified from Green Globe, maybe Earthcheck, or maybe local Trihita Karana Tourism Award, and also now from the government working with GSTC, you know. But I want to know from your perspective, how about the tourist perception on the hotel property with the certification? Are they willing to pay more for that, or just, you know, I choose them because the same price, but better certificate or something like that. If they ask more price, maybe I think I have to choose another property or something like that.
Great.
So please explain to us. Thank you very much.
Is there a real demand signal coming from the tourists for greener product? Any other questions out there? I've got one on food waste and one on what's really going. Catherine.
Thank you so much. I'm Catherine from the Blended Finance Task Force. We had a demand question there, and I just wanted to put the other question out there about investors and shareholders. Are they seeing this as value creating? That's it. Thank you.
Do investors create value?
No, do investors see sustainability as value creating?
They see sustainability as. Right. Let's stop there, if that's okay. We've got 3 questions. I'm going to start with food waste. Do we have a clear set of guidelines? Are we acting on those guidelines? Do those guidelines get reflected in the travel lists, whatever certificate? How are we doing on food waste? And I'm going to start, Joel, with you, because actually, historically, the cruise industry has been notorious for food waste. What's the target that you've set yourself as an industry to cut food waste by 2030?
So I'm not actually aware of a specific target, but I know that it's something that the cruise lines, as part of their broader sustainability reporting, are taking very seriously. And not only from the, I suppose, from the environmental perspective, but just from the I suppose, the operational aspects of, operating in an enclosed environment, a remote environment, and sourcing products. So whereas, for example, it would be quite common for cruise lines to transport food halfway across the world.
Indeed.
There's much more focus now on sourcing locally. Right. And then at the other end, making sure that it's being used in a responsible way, that there isn't wastage. That old trope of the the exorbitant lavish buffet with food overflowing is the cruise lines are working very hard to move away from that. And that's also because people are demanding a different kind of product. People want healthier food, they want choice, they want freshly cooked food. So you'll find that most cruise lines have moved away from that idea of the endless buffet.
So all good, real progress, but no specific target.
That I'm aware of.
So let's get one of those,
Yeah.
shall we? Homework. Brune?
The issue of food waste is extremely difficult, at least in the hospitality industry, because when you go to a hotel, you just want to enjoy, right? First. Second, there is also this notion of hospitality, and with hospitality, the very word, comes the fact that you just want to give and be the best host possible.
Of course, we had a beautiful buffet downstairs.
And we had a beautiful buffet.
Right? I mean, look at it, right? And I'm sure it was filled up to the end, right?
Exactly. And so that's typical, the type of challenges. Look at the breakfast. So that's why, yes, we do have a target. I'm not going to say it now because we're still working on it, but we're basically reviewing it to have it as ambitious as possible. But food waste is absolutely critical, but it's also very difficult. You might think that it's obvious, right, to be fighting food waste because, less food means, more revenue in a way. I mean, you potentially save money, but it's extremely difficult because it requires huge behavior change from the teams and the people in the kitchen. It requires also going against your customers. Yeah. And that's also one of sort of the elephant in the room. We're all talking about customers, what do they want and everything. But if we are truly responsible, do we need as companies to wait for our customers to ask for something? Not at all. Our role is to actually be, and in a way, I don't like this word because it sounds a bit patronizing, but in a way we need to educate our customers. And so that's also huge because you need to change your teams, their behavior, the way they think, the way they approach the issue. Then you need to do the same with customers. And again, it goes against the culture of the hospitality industry where you want to please your customers, which is, normal. Yeah. It's part of hospitality, as I was saying. And I think, and finally, it requires really also deeper changes, which is the type of service that we offer. Do we need buffet or not? How do you not have buffet in some parts of the world, such as, for example, Saudi Arabia or even parts of Asia, where it's really also part of the culture? So all of this makes food waste a huge challenge. If it was easy, the industry would have solved it already. Because again, there's potentially a lot of savings, financial savings from it.
I've got to ask a collaboration question. 10-second answer.
So that's one of the things also that I don't like about Travelis is that it focuses only on the, then I'm going to stop, and sorry, Jeremy, but it focuses a lot on certification and all of that. So first, choosing certifications that are not ambitious enough, and also viewing sustainability really as sort of a box that you have to tick. I understand that you need to have access to some sort of data and third-party information that you put on your website. Makes sense. But it doesn't really address all those huge issues. Are you working with labels to push them to be more ambitious themselves? Are you actually pushing labels and certifications on your platform that are truly ambitious? All of that, it's a big greenwashing initiative so far.
I would like to comment on that. Can I comment on Brune, what you just said?
Sorry.
Johanna,
sorry, I have to make myself heard because I don't see you.
And I actually don't see you either, Johanna, so it's quite tricky. So do come in for a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, with the talent challenge that you mentioned, Brune, earlier, I found out that a lot of restaurants in hotels have good results in challenging their young teams to be ambitious in what they serve, how they improve. It's not only a matter of waste of food, it's also a matter of choice of food, like more plant-based that goes into water again. So it's really a way to energize and to incentivize staff as well, to work with them on this issue of food waste. And there are many good ways to avoid food waste.
Now, we're into overtime. I'm going to keep us on the panel for another 5 minutes or so, if that's okay, because it's quite vibrant. Unless I'm going to move us on to the second question, if that's okay, which is about, I'll spare you on the food waste one, right? But demand, right? Do customers actually want to, if you will, pay more for green? Do you find that in the data that you're, seeing in Booking.com? And then I'm going to ask everyone now to go into 30-second answers on that.
Sure. Okay. No, so Pakagun, thank you for the question on green travel. So I think for us, we do assess that there is a want from the consumer, but there's a gap between the mindset and actually making that purchase decision that is more sustainable. There's definitely a gap. Right? If everybody did what they reflected on their survey answers, they would, then we would just rely on survey answers, right? So that unfortunately is not the case. And I think part of this comes down to the supply issue as well, right? Because if you want to choose a green tour, sort of itinerary, is it also plentiful and available amongst the other perhaps green choices, right? However we define the word green here. So the question is, you know, are the green choices as many, as numerous as the non-green ones? Because I think when consumers can choose amongst the set of options they have, they'll choose the one that is the most, you know, immediately emotionally stimulating, right, for why they choose to travel. So if it's adventure they're looking for the most adventurous. They're not thinking about whether the adventurous, you know, itinerary is green or not. So the question is how do we make, you know, the subset of choices that consumers have to choose from, almost all of them have some element of green. Now, I'm not defining what green means, but just to answer within the confines of your question of what green means. Yeah.
So yes, but say do gap and not enough supply.
Not enough supply.
Basically.
Exactly.
And so your job in a way is to find ways to expand supply if you can.
Yes, and that is not easy.
Not easy. Joel, 30-second answer.
I think from a cruise perspective, there are two levels. So in terms of passengers choosing their cruise, I think in some parts of the world there is more consciousness, and it's more built into the purchasing decision. Other parts of the world, when I talk to travel agents in Australia, I say, does anybody ever ask you about the green credentials of the cruise line before they book the cruise? Never. But in Europe, definitely.
So does the industry then go out of its way collectively to change consumer behavior?
So the industry is talking to the consumers and explaining to the consumers, and that's one of our jobs, is to make sure we're telling the story better so that they are informed about what's happening. The other, I suppose, level is in terms of the product, the tour product. So I know that, and I think to your point about supply, if the cruise lines could, that they would be only dealing with ground operators or tour operators who met those standards, but there actually isn't sufficient supply. So if they're going to continue to offer tours to their passengers, they sometimes have to compromise on which tour operators they're operating. But it is getting better, but it's by no means where it should be.
So you're another one that has latent demand, right? Probably information failure where it comes to really being able to know what is and isn't green, and inadequate supply, right? Classic. Brune.
So, how do you break the classic sort of situation? And I think that's really our role as companies. First is really, as I said, not wait for customers to ask for things. Second, not just say there's no supply, just how do we organize ourselves to make sure that there is increased supply. And third, how do we lobby governments as well to regulate more so that we create also a platform. And finally, there are different ways of moving forward, which is also what you said in one of the conclusions of your report as well, Jeremy, is really how do we all work together throughout the value chain to basically change entire systems. And I think that's what we should really be focusing on. We are trying in the hospitality industry, and I can go on and on about this forever. But again, we need you to step up as well. I mean, we can just not do everything on our own. So I've been trying to work with travelers for years, not for years, for months, and it's been quite difficult. It's true in this industry, travel and tourism industry. It is really not a habit to be working together to push for things that the customers are not asking and to push to be more sustainable.
So the great news is that coming out of
exactly.
this panel, right, because great radical collaboration starts with great radical honesty.
Absolutely.
I have a sense that there's going to be something amazing that's going to come out of Accor and Travelist and Booking.com together.
Yeah, I mean,
seriously.
Just to give everyone a little bit of background on what is Travelist, I think we have never actually explained what that is yet. But just very briefly, it was actually an NGO started by Prince Harry to actually gather the different players in the travel ecosystem. So now we have Amadeus, Booking, Expedia Group, Travelport are all members. Visa's a member. Google's a member. And we are, and the NGO is open to all sectors, by the way, including accommodation, as well as auto players, transport players, as well as government. The idea, and this is something that is within the ethos of what Booking is doing, is we love to engage and we love to invite other partners to participate in that engagement. So we don't shy away from hearing difficult, feedback, But we also want to participate in forums where we have that dialogue. And you know, that was the onus of why we started. We were one of the founding members of Travelist. So just to give everyone that background of what Travelist actually is, it's really sort of somewhat the first of its kind.
So let's have a concrete project on the ground, just like you did in Singapore. Let's work on something. The Travelist Coalition proves that it can get into the real world to actually push the industry forward faster and with more impact. If you're ready to do that, let's do that. And we can come back 1 year later,
Let's do it.
next
1 year
year,
later.
in the next
Same panel.
GTF forum, we come back and we take stock of where we stand.
2.0.
Exactly.
I'm very conscious that time's up, right? We're going to go 30 seconds each, and I'm sorry we haven't got to the investor question, but we've had the right conversation. Johanna, first, final word on what you would like to see happen over the next few months to push forward the collaboration that you started with, then to Brune, then to Yang Li, then I'm going to end in Joel, and then I'm going to stop. Johanna, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I would like to see as many partners as possible joining the idea of water legacy, because with this we can really change a lot of things for the positive. And we need the governments, we need the academics, the society, the environment, and everyone in that. So whatever program we can make and to communicate the story will be good and will help. I agree with Brune. 1 year later, we should have at least booking come into the water legacy project and some others too, maybe Accor.
Fantastic. Yay. Johanna, thank you for joining in remotely. Brune.
Yeah, pleasure.
Radical collaboration that actually has an impact on the ground, and an action plan coming out of this panel discussion. I don't know whether it answered your question, Jeremy.
It's a good enough answer because
but,
it was
you know,
short, and I'm getting sort of all sorts of signals from behind. So thank you so much, Brune. It's been fantastic. Yang Li.
I mean, I would echo similar themes, but I would also say, you know, we need governments to also engage with us. I think we didn't really touch on this point, but some of the most radical collaborations and effectiveness on the ground has been when governments have been very forward-thinking, very collaborative, and putting money also to the table. Because we understand, you know, in the private sector, you know, we can invest, but sometimes that is not enough, and we need the government to also support amongst all levels of stakeholders, those who are very well off, and particularly those who are not. So I would say that would be my call out.
Amazing. And there's no better place to make the call out than here, because in Indonesia you have a government that is innovative, action-oriented, specific, and wants to make this industry a huge, huge success. So really good call. Joel.
I echo collaboration and partnership and government. What cruise sits in tourism and in maritime. And one of the things we heard out of COP is that, you know, the maritime industry really needs government support in order to be able to develop those maritime fuels, in order to be able to reach those net zero goals. So we need the collaboration, but we also need the support and the efforts from government to actually get those fuels at a scalable level.
Great, thank you all. I'm going to be failed as a moderator because we are massively over time, just as I failed as a presenter by being massively over time. But actually, I think this has been a really vibrant conversation, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I believe that the next thing to happen is I stop.
And we have a group photo.
Group photo, yes.
Nice.
For you to catch your flight.
Right, thank you all so much. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna.
Let's have a group photo. Can we have Johanna on screen, please? Can we shift further to the
We can
left?
stand in front of the